Lord Kapila Dev, because part of the reason is in their Houston community, they've been reading together Srimad Bhagavatam, and they just had completed Canto 2 just before I got there. And so when I arrived, we were beginning Canto 3. And of the various forms of the personality of Godhead, who is described in Srimad Bhagavatam in Canto 3, that first personality that's described is Lord Kapila. So I'm going to give a little background on who is Lord Kapila anyways. For those that are a little bit familiar with Vedic wisdom, as soon as you hear the name Lord Kapila, a bell rings. The bell that says he taught Sankhya philosophy. Now, what's Sankhya philosophy? And who's Lord Kapila? So going back in the early parts of Canto 3, we find Vidura. Everyone knows who Vidura is. The third of the three brothers, Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura. So going way back in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a description of Duryodhana's insulting Vidura in the royal assembly. It was so insulting. And there was a threat to drive him out with nothing but the breath left. No possessions, no grace, nothing. Get out of here. It's like really nasty. So Vidura left, not because he was hurt by the very unkind words, but he, like many of us, or at least some of us, he's very service-minded. And he tried and he tried and he tried and he tried. Vidura tried to help his elder brother. His elder brother had affection for Vidura. Vidura had great affection for him. Not only because they were brothers, but actually Dhritarashtra was a great soul. He just was too attached. Sometimes elevated persons become too attached. He was too attached. So Vidura left and went on pilgrimage. This is Canto 1, one of the chapters. So at the beginning of Canto, at the end of Canto 2, there's a discussion between Maharaj Parikshit and Shukadev Goswami, or the sages of Naimisharanya and Sutta, who said, you said way back in Canto 1 that Vidura went on pilgrimage after he left the royal assembly, and that he met Maitreya. Could you describe his pilgrimage? Where did he go and what was his experience? And most importantly, the subjects that were discussed between Maitreya. Who's Maitreya? Maitreya Muni and Vidura, they're both very elevated souls. For example, Maitreya was friends with Vyasadeva. Could you imagine? They were friends. They associated together, discussed topics together, underwent austerities together. They associated on the spiritual platform together. They're not exactly equal because Vyasadeva is an incarnation of the Supreme Lord. But Maitreya is a very elevated person. So the question was, what were the topics they discussed? So now we're going into the third canto, chapter 1, and then all of that is reviewed. And then Vidura, in the course of his pilgrimage, He spent 34 years. That's a long pilgrimage. It's not like get on a plane, go to a holy place, take some selfies, and come back. And 34 years. He went to Prabhas because that's very near Dwarka, and it's also a holy place. And there he learned from the local brahmanas that Krishna and all of the Yadu dynasty had departed. The circumstances, he heard about it. He was very sad because he's attached to Krishna, and Krishna had gone. And then he continued on his pilgrimage. He ended up in Vrindavan, and lo and behold, in Vrindavan, my Krishna, we're going to be looking at this screen over here. You can sit over there, but Vrindavan. In a forest of Vrindavan, who did he find in a forest of Vrindavan but Uddhava? And as soon as he saw Uddhava, was Uddhava, and you see Uddhava and you think of Krishna. Why? He was a constant, even more than Arjuna. Arjuna was Krishna's cousin. Uddhava was Krishna's cousin. We know Arjuna was so dear to Krishna. Even more dear to Krishna was Uddhava. He was with him all the time. From the time he went to Mathura until the time he left the planet. That's a lot of years. 115 years. He was constant companion. And he knew Krishna's heart. So, Uddhava. And then he started asking, how's everybody in Dwarka? He knew that they were gone, but he didn't want to say. Because you don't say things that are hurtful. Even if it's true. People that are socially nuanced, they don't say things that are going to be hurtful to somebody. So how's Krishna? How's Balaram? How's Ugrasena? How's Vasudeva and Devaki and Krishna's sons, Pradyumna, and he's listing names. How is everybody? For about 3 chapters, Uddhava goes into a trance in deep absorption and thought of Krishna. And he speaks amazing things, his heart about Krishna. And then in one chapter, he's describing Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. The next chapter is Krishna's pastimes out of Vrindavan, kind of like a mini preview of Canto 10, but it's in Canto 3. It's really nice. It's really nice. Then Vidura asks more questions, not just about how Krishna and Balaram, but many, many more questions. And they have been speaking all night long. And Uddhava says, you should speak to Maitreya. It's not, there's a teaching, there's an etiquette that don't give instructions when there's somebody nearby who's more senior. In fact, the Bhagavatam says that Vidura wanted to become Uddhava's disciple. He wanted Uddhava to be his spiritual master. But it wasn't appropriate because Maitreya was not far away. And besides, he said, Krishna gave me a service. When he left, before he left, he gave me a service. The service was, of the various places I wanted to go to give my association, I didn't go to Badrinath. There in Badrinath, there's devotees of Narayana Rishi. Go there. You convey my message to them, my teachings that I've given to you elaborately. That's my service. That's the service I'm giving to you. So I have to go now. I have to go to Badrinath. So Uddhava left. Vidura came to meet Maitreya. And there was a wonderful exchange, 2 elevated persons But Maitreya is now at the stage of an Uttama Bhakta, because Maitreya also heard Krishna speaking to Uddhava. Maitreya was very elevated, but now he was a perfected bhakti personality. So he had many, many questions. In the course of those many, the starting point, very interesting. The starting point of his many questions was, can you please, in simple language, can you please describe creation? Now, Vidura is very learned. It's not like he didn't know. It's not like he didn't know. But hearing even something that you know from the sound vibration of a perfected soul like Maitreya, ask it again, and ask it again, and ask it again. I think you're going to have to come sit in the front row, because the screen's over here, and if you sit over there, you won't see the screen that's over here. Sit in the front row. Go ahead, sit in the front row. They want the coveted seats, I've learned, is to be able to put your back against something. People like the wall and other things like that. Okay. So where were we? We're with Uddhava, no, with Maitreya and Vidura, and he's asking about creation. So if you get to the point of reading Srimad Bhagavatam into like the middle chapters of Canto 3, you'll find description of creation. And I'm not going to go through all that. But after Vishnu does what Vishnu does, he expands universes, and he enters into each universe as Garbhodakshay Vishnu. And then from Garbhodakshay Vishnu comes whom? Lord Brahma. And from Lord Brahma, he builds the universe. Each universe has one Garbhodakshay Vishnu, who has one Brahma, who builds the universe. There's many, many universes. That picture is made very clear. And after he fills the universe, he's got another service. He has to fill it up with living entities. And so he makes some arrangement for living entities to fill up the universe. They're Prajapatis. And along with the Prajapatis, there has to be some way of governing a social structure, or like laws that govern mankind. So Manu appears. And in every day of Brahma, not his life, but every day of Brahma, there's 14 Manus. And the first of those 14 Manus starts with an S. Swayambhuva Manu. So Swayambhuva Manu, he appears directly from the body of Brahma, and along with him, his good wife. And his good wife is Shatarupa. And they're in their mature stage of life. They're not like little babies and they grow up. They're mature. And he has his assignment. His assignment is to assist Brahma fill up the universe. So he and Shatarupa, his good wife, they have 5 children, 2 men, 2 boys, and 3 daughters. And interestingly, the ladies will be happy to hear this, he first speaks about the ladies. And of the ladies, there's 3 daughters, Devahuti, Prasuti, and Akuti. So he speaks a lot about Devahuti. I'm doing all this to get to Kapila Dev. I'm just giving you like the backdrop before we do the deity worship. So Devahuti, at Swayambhuva Manu's royal palace, he's Manu. They have a big palace. And many sages visit their palace. And one of those sages that visit their palace is Narada Muni. Narada Muni speaks about Kapila Dev. Kapila Dev is one of the sons of Brahma. So it's the son of Brahma. There's many sages, Kapila Dev, and other Brahmanas. And over here is Swayambhuva Manu, who is also a son, and then there's the daughter. I just heard Prabhupada explain like this, just this morning, that it's not prevalent except in South India today, although it used to be prevalent. That is, the marriage of a girl to their maternal uncle is auspicious. Have you heard that before? You've heard it before. Okay. And he gives examples and says today it's not common, except still in South India it's common. Anyways, that's what happened. So she heard about a potential husband. And when it became time for her marriage, her father asked her, she's a princess, did you have an idea who you'd like to marry? Karnamoni. They never met. She just heard about his qualities and character, etc., from Narada. And Narada sannyasi, what's he doing matchmaking? But, in this case he did. There's other cases where he did also. So Swayambhuva Manu wanted to find out where is he. So he found out where he is, and he brought his daughter, Devahuti, into the forest. And by the way, 3 days before, 2 to 3 days before he found Kardama Muni in the forest, Kardama Muni was deeply engaged in meditation, because that's the process of achieving perfection in the first of the 4 yugas, Satya Yuga, Dhyayate, meditation. So he was engaged in meditation and devotional service, and he was deeply absorbed, so deeply absorbed that Lord Vishnu came to where he was in the forest. Vishnu was standing on the back of Garuda. The wings of Garuda were gently making a sound, like a helicopter or something, hovering over where he was doing his meditation. And Karamuni paid obeisances again and again. Lord Vishnu spoke, I've come because you pleased me very much by your devotion. I understand your heart. Not only you want to have a son, but you want to have me as your son. You want to have Lord Vishnu, the personality of Godhead, as your son, and so I will become your son. And to have a son, you're going to need a wife. Good news, in 2 to 3 days, she's going to come find you in the forest. Normally not so easy, right, ladies? She's going to come find you. Her name is Devahuti. It's described. She was not just the daughter of Swayambhuva Manu. She was very accomplished at Ashtanga Yoga. She herself was a bit of a mystic. She wasn't just like she can do asanas really well. She was an accomplished person. So Lord Vishnu departed. A few days later, Swayambhuva Manu came, and there was some discussion. We're getting closer to Kapila's appearance. But when Swayambhuva Manu came, he is a Kshatriya, Karamuni is a Brahmana, so he's offering his respect to his future son-in-law. His future son-in-law recognizes he's a great soul. He's offering respect to the great soul, Swayambhuva Manu. So it's really, the social etiquette is fantastic. The way that they speak to one another, the points that they make about their importance of their position, etc., etc. And then it gets right down to, here's my daughter, would you accept her in marriage? And Kardamoni says, yes. He didn't say Vishnu came and told me this is all going to happen, but he said yes on one condition. What's that? That after a son is born and he reaches the stage of maturity, then he can look after your daughter, Devahuti, and then I will return to the forest and continue my activities. He consented, Devahuti consented, that was standard. Enter Vanaprastha stage when the children are grown up, right? So they were married right there in the forest. Pretty simple marriage, wasn't the usual fanfare. And Swayambhuva Manu and his wife, Shatarupa, they went back to their palace. And she stayed there. Now, this is Satya Yuga. And how long do people live in Satya Yuga? Here's how it goes. In Kali Yuga, maximum duration, 100 years. And then the Yuga prior, you add another 0. 100 becomes 1,000. Then the prior Yuga, like during Lord Ramachandra's time, 10,000. During Satya Yuga, 100,000. That's a long time. So for a couple of something, I forget the number, over 10,000 years, she was with him in the forest. She's used to palace life. She's doing all the austerities that he does and helping him in everything that he does. And she became lean and thin and all those things. And he understood her heart. She also wanted a son, and he did also. So what did he do? By his mystic power, he created a flying city. His mystic cities developed a city. Palaces, avenues, parks, trees, birds, this is and that's. And together they went traveling on a vacation all over the universe. He was a powerful person. And they came back after a tour, and 9 daughters were born, one after the next. And she was pregnant, Shatarupa was pregnant with, not Shatarupa, Devahuti was pregnant with another child. So Brahma came to visit them. And he came on his swan carrier because he's the father and of Kardama Muni. You did exactly as I asked you to do. I asked you to assist in creating good offspring to fill up the universe. These 9 daughters should be given to the other sages as a wife, so they can also assist me in this filling up the universe with good praja. And your good wife is now pregnant. Within her womb is an incarnation of the personality of Godhead, and I'll give him a name right now. Name is Kapila, because he will have ruddy complexion. And off he went. The daughters were in time given to the sages, as was requested. And Kapila Muni, the son of Kardama Muni and Devahuti, was born. And when he became the son, Kapila, this is an incarnation, became of age. He's an avatar Vishnu. Kardama requested his son, who he knew to be the personality of Godhead, that he wanted to go back into the forest and continue his enter the Vanaprastha stage. It's a little puzzling because he's going to meditate on Vishnu, who's his son. He's going to leave his son to go meditate on Vishnu. A bit of a puzzle. The only explanation that I've heard that makes a little bit of sense, he wanted to show by example. It's the early stages, and elevated persons do, one of the reasons they do things is to teach by example. So there was some exchange between him and Kapila, and he left. And that takes us to chapter 25. Look what I did. Just took you through some part of Canto 1, the conclusion of Canto 2, and 25 chapters, 24 chapters of Canto 3. An overview, 35,000 feet high, but high, an overview. And now we're going to spend some time on chapter 25. In the beginning of chapter 25, Devahuti turns to her son and asks some questions. And that's where we're going to begin. Now, there's a series of verses in chapter 25. It's an Ashtaka, 8 verses. Sadhu Sangha Ashtaka. 8 verses that express the importance of Sadhu Sangha. That's our topic. So to get to that Sadhu Sangastaka, there's a series of questions that Devahuti presents to her son. And here's the questions. Hope it works. There we go. There's like 10 verses. This is just a simple summary of those 10 verses. I've fallen into the abyss of ignorance due to my feeling of false ego. I have been engaged by your Maya and have identified myself with the body and consequent bodily relations. In other words, she's been with her husband for over 10,000 years. And she's attached. He's a perfected person. And she's way up there, but she's very attached. And I'm too much absorbed in the conception, the bodily conception and bodily relations. You are the axe which can cut the tree of material existence. So she requests, I inquire from you as to the relationship between man and woman and between spirit and matter. Now, the relationship between spirit and matter is what Sankhya is. Everyone's attention is at the door, so I'm going to stop till everyone's attention comes back. Radhabal, Hare Krishna. No wonder they're paying attention. Great soul has arrived. Has anyone, I'll explain. Does anyone like to hear an explanation of what does Sankhya mean? Because that's Kapila's gift, his specialty, as he propounded Sankhya philosophy. So Sankhya literally means to count. Just a straight definition. Sankhya means to count. So break that down, and there's categories of matter, and there's divisions of matter, and then over here there's divisions of spirit. We belong to the category of spirit. So it's detachment from matter. Matter's this and this and this and this and this. 24 elements described in chapter 26. This is chapter 25. But she's asking, please describe spirit and matter. And then specifically, man and woman, because she's feeling deeply grieved by the loss of the absence of her husband, this great personality. I mean, with his mystic power, he can build a flying city. How great was Karnamuni? And everything else that he did. Who imagined what his personality was like? How gracious, how gifted. Anyway, then the response comes from Kapila Dev, where he's saying, He doesn't give emphasis on knowledge. He gives emphasis on devotional service, because devotional service gives rise to knowledge. Many of you have been around for a while, so you know that in the Vedas, there's this couplet of Jnana Vairagya, especially in the Upanishads. Jnana Vairagya. When there's Gyan, there's Vairagya. When there's an absence of Gyan, it's its opposite, when there's attachment. But he, Kapila Dev, is going to teach Sankhya, which is matter and spirit and detachment from matter by knowing that you belong to the category of spirit. His emphasis is on bhakti. He's an incarnation of Vishnu. So Sankhya is part of what he teaches, but Sankhya has a purpose, and the purpose of devotional service is attachment to the Supreme. And the good news is, when you're attached to the Supreme causelessly, knowledge and detachment arise. The very last verse, I was visiting Houston before I went to Austin. The very last verse that I spoke about in a home visit like this was this verse from Canto 1, Chapter 2. Listen to the Sanskrit. There's somebody at the door, so everyone's attention is going to the door. Okay. Listen. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojataha Janiyati Ashu Vairagyam Jnanam Cha Yadahaitukam. You notice that the term Vasudev, in the vocative it becomes Vasudev, Vasudeve, but Vasudeva in the vocative becomes Vasudeve. Vasudeve Bhagavati, he's Bhagavan. Bhakti Yoga Prayojat, so Bhakti Yoga unto whom? Vasudev. Who's Vasudev? He's Bhagavan. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojataha. Now what happens when you do that? Janiyati Ashu, Ashu means very quickly. Janiyati Ashu Vairagyam Jnanam Cha Yad Ahaitukam. Ahaitukam means causelessly. Knowledge and detachment arise. Causelessly, knowledge and detachment arise. So become a nice devotee. And in other words, it's really nice. Within a seed is life. It's not fructified yet. It's still in a seed stage. Similarly, within the heart is a teaching. It's a devotional teaching. Within the heart is love for the Supreme. Prema, not only we have an eternal relationship with the Supreme because we're part of the Supreme, but there's love, dormant, latent, like a seed has life. Just have to fructify the seed and it develops whatever it's the seed of. A plant, a tree, something, whatever. So within the heart of every living entity is love. And with that love, then there's also a knowledge of the lovable object. As you associate with somebody, you come to know more and more and more about that somebody. And when their qualities are very wonderful, then loving feelings become nourished by that association and your knowledge of what a wonderful person they are. What to speak of, it's the Supreme Person. So when there's bhakti unto Vasudeva, when it awakens, then knowledge and detachment follow. So Devahuti wants to know, how do I become free from this attachment? The axe that can chop the tree of material existence. He's going to teach detachment to knowledge, but the method is bhakti. Now, and how does bhakti begin? He's very clear. Bhakti begins, really simple, by association with bhakti, or by someone who's carrying bhakti. right in Bhagavad Gita, that you develop qualities like those with whom you associate. If you want to get warm, stand near a fire. You get warm. No, it's Texas, so maybe you don't want to stand near a fire. But if you're going to cook in the kitchen, you stand near the fire, you're going to get warm because there's heat with fire. The principle is the association that you keep cultivates qualities. So there's material qualities and there's spiritual quality. And that's matter and then spirit. So material qualities are goodness, passion, ignorance. So it's good to be in association with good people because you develop good qualities. And it's good to avoid association with unwholesome people because you hang out with unwholesome people, you can develop some unwholesome qualities. Like Prabhupada's statement, how does somebody become a drunkard? They hang out with people that drink a lot. How do they become a gambler, addicted gambler? Hang out with people that gamble. Really simple. Want to become a good person? Hang out with people that are good. Be in association, more than just hang out. Engage in serving those good people in the mood of a humble mood towards with regard for good people. Now that's good. Those are material qualities. And then spiritual qualities are devoid of material qualities. What's that? That's what sadhu is. So he's advocating sadhu sangha to Devahuti. And that's in the first of the 8 verses. But when I was in Austin, I covered the first of the 8 verses. So after hearing the value of devotional service, Devahuti wants to know how to practice it. So this beginning part of practicing sadhu, devotional service is sadhu sangha. This is a nice painting of Narada in the association of sadhus, and guess what they're doing? They're hearing Narada speaking about topics of bhakti. Because Narada Muni is an empowered incarnation. An empowered incarnation means one who's carrying the Shakti of the Supreme Lord in a particular feature. Like Brahma, he's an empowered incarnation, empowered to create. Shrishti Shakti. Or the 4 Kumaras, they're empowered with the Lord's potency of knowledge, Jnana Shakti. Or Prithu Maharaj, another incarnation. He's empowered with the Lord's ruling potency, Palana Shakti. Nara is empowered with Bhakti Shakti. He's good. He's a good person to be with. He helps a lot of people just by his Bhakti Shakti. So he's giving sadhu sangha to these sages. In that first verse, that's the emphasis that's given. I'll show you the verse. That's the next slide. The path of liberation, this is this detachment and attachment to spirit, begins with association with sadhus. Here's the verse. If you don't mind, let's say it together. This is text 20, the first of these 8 verses. This is what we discussed in Austin. Prasangam arajam prasam atmana kavayo vidu eva sadhushu krito mokshadwaram apavratam. One more. Prasangam arajam dhammam atmana kavayo vidu eva sadhushu krito mokshadwaram apavratam. Mokshadwaram, the door for liberation. Moksha Dwaram. The door opens by Sadhu Sangha. And then the opposite is also there. This material attachment keeps one bound, and Sadhu Sangha gives liberation. That's the doorway. So she's heard that. Now here's a nice painting of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu receiving Diksha from his guru, and there's some of Nimai Pandit students that are with them watching this whole scene. Understanding the qualities that decorate a sadhu allows one to recognize him and make him an object of one's affection. Understanding the qualities. So let's go to Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, it's the beginning. In chapter 13 in Bhagavad Gita is a Sankhya chapter, because there's categories of matter and categories of spirit. Some of you like Bhagavad Gita, I can tell. You're smiling. Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 13, Arjuna asked Krishna 3 pairs of spirit and matter. What's the field of activities and the knower of the field of activities? What's knowledge and the object of knowledge? What's Prakriti and Purusha? Spirit and matter. The Sankhya. When Krishna is describing qualities, because that's what this is speaking about, qualities that decorate a sadhu, you look at those at items of knowledge. One who has knowledge has qualities. Say it negative. Those that don't have qualities don't have knowledge. They may have information. They may be a PhD and so many other nice things and have many followers and write many books. But if they don't have good qualities, they don't have knowledge. Now I'll say it the other way. One who has knowledge has good qualities. And Krishna identifies what those qualities are. The qualities of one who has knowledge. Amanitvam, adambitvam, that's how it starts. Humility and pridelessness. Supposing you meet somebody that's got a lot of degrees and written a lot of books, and they're really proud. No, thank you. You don't want that person's association. It's unpalatable. Pride. But humility is very attractive. It's a feature of one who has knowledge. The feature of one who has knowledge is not they have a lot of book learning, but they have the quality of knowledge. He's here this evening just to help us stay humble. Just in case you had. So now I'm going to the next verse. This is the next 2 verses. Kapila begins to define the characteristics or the qualities of a sadhu. And some of these qualities, here's the verse. Some of these qualities are similar to the language. The Sanskrit is a little different, but similar to the qualities found in chapter 13, verses 8 through 12. Chatikshava Karunika, Surata Sarvadehinam, Ajata Shatravat Shanta, Sadhava Sadhubhushanam. Bhushanam means ornaments. The ornaments for Bhushanam of a sadhu are these. They're tolerant, Titikshava. They're Karunika, they're merciful. And Surata Sarvadehinam, they're friendly to all living entities. Suhrid, means they hold dear to their heart. Sarvadehinam, all living entities. They're dear to friendly to all living entities. Ajata Shatravats, they're peaceful. They have no enemies. They abide by scriptures. And all their characteristics are sublime. So that's like big bucket. All their characteristics are sublime. The second half. Such a sadhu, this is what they do, but it's also a characteristic. They engage in staunch devotional service. Bhaktim kurvanti ye dridham They engage in staunch devotional service to the Lord without deviation. Mat krite, for the sake of the Lord, he renounces all other connections, such as family relationships and friendly acquaintances with the Lord. Now, what does that mean? Some of you are familiar with Queen Kunti's prayers. There's a whole chapter dedicated to Queen Kunti. And it comes even before the chapter related to Grandfather Bhishma. This is first canto Bhagavatam. And she offers, with the circumstances, Krishna is going to leave. He rescued the whole situation. Kurukshetra battle is over. Yudhisthira is now the emperor of the world. Krishna stayed several months with them just to make their hearts pacified with the new situation. Now he's going to go back to Dwarka. Queen Kunti doesn't want him to go. There's a beautiful painting. There's different versions that Krishna went to touch the feet of Kunti because that's his aunt. So he's offering his respect to her elder position. And she sees him as the personality of Godhead because he is. So she has some conflict in her heart. How can he touch my feet? But he's showing the etiquette of a younger to an elder, showing that respect. And then she opens her heart and says many, many, many things. The essence of it is, please don't go. She doesn't say it, but that's what she's saying. That's her feeling, and it comes out. And one of the things she's saying is very similar to what Devahuti is saying. She's saying, you're about to leave. And when you leave, my sons will not be with your association. But while you're here, my relatives, Mataji, Shanti. When Krishna's with them in Hastinapur, her father and her father's family and all that part of her family, they're missing Krishna. So she's torn between her father's family and her sons. Because she's a lady, she has both. She has her father's family and she has her own family. So she prays, similar to what this is, she prays to Krishna, please remove this affinity. Now, it doesn't mean, and then what it does mean is, I just want to become cold and I don't care about people anymore. That's not what she's asking. The material portion of my attachment, take that away. And if you take away the material portion of attachment, what's left is the spiritual attachment. So spiritual attachment is wanted. The material attachment makes one bewildered. And it's throughout the Bhagavatam. Say, go back again to my previous visit in Houston, and we talked about it again and often. When bhakti becomes strong, there's knowledge of reality, there's spirit over here, there's matter over there, and I don't belong to the category of matter. I deal with it because here we are. We're in the material world with matter, and we deal with it. And we deal responsibly according to the codes of conduct given to us by the Vedas. Codes of conduct given to us by the Vedas. We live in the world in a theistic way, a virtuous way, a proper way. We do that while we're here, but we don't identify with it. At least one who has awakened bhakti doesn't identify with it. So Kunti is praying, please take away the material portion of my attachment, leaving only the spiritual portion of my attachment. She doesn't say it in that language. She, please take away my attachment. That's what's being said here. The quality of one who's very advanced in bhakti, they live in this world, they act in a very caring and affectionate and responsible way, and they're not attached. It's like, that's very strange. It's not strange. It's unusual, because generally people are really responsible when they're really attached. But supposing you're not really attached, how are you going to be really responsible? Then it's when you're spiritually attached. I mean, a really nice example, there's going to be several images here of Srila Prabhupada. He left his home, family life. He left all the possessions with his family, all the wealth and everything when he entered the Vanaprastha stage. He took up sannyas. He had nothing. I mean, materially. He had everything, but he had nothing materially. And he just was engaged in service without all the details. There's many, many obstacles he met again and again, and then a new ones and different ones and other ones. And he continued and continued tirelessly. For why? He said it many times. Sarve sukhino bhavantu. Everyone should be happy. That was it. And what is happiness? He knew what happiness was and what it wasn't. Happiness is being connected to the source of all happiness. Satchit Ananda Vigraha. And unhappiness is being attached to all the things that are temporary. It doesn't mean trash stuff. It doesn't mean karma sannyas. Give away your worldly possessions and now you're a spiritual person. It doesn't mean that. It means to see those things without attachment and use those things in Krishna's service with attachment to Krishna. That's spiritual life. So this is the characteristics. Titikshava, Karunika, Surada Sarvadehinam, Ajata Shatrabhakshanta, Sadhavasara Sadhubhushanam. So here's qualities of a sadhu. This is a painting where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu it's a nice pastime. When he was young, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a scholar. And his field of scholarship was Sanskrit grammar. And he had a friend who was really good at Sanskrit grammar. He wrote a book on Sanskrit grammar. And he wanted Mahaprabhu to see it. Mahaprabhu already had a Sanskrit grammar book. And his friend went, oh no, anything I've done is not going to be as good as what he did. So Mahaprabhu threw his book in the river. But he taught it anyways. So that's a quality of a sadhu, and outstanding for us is the life of our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada, because whatever he did was for Krishna. And this is the central characteristic of a devotee. Let's go back to Bhagavad Gita. It parallels the relationship between Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita is often said, Bhagavad Gita is undergraduate study, Bhagavatam is graduate study. So the undergraduate study goes like this. I mentioned there's 19 qualities of a person situated in knowledge. And one of those 19 is primary, Swarup Lakshana. And the others are secondary. They flow from the primary. So the primary is being completely attached to the personality of Godhead. Same as what was the first verse spoken by Kapila Dev. Mai chananya yogena bhaktir avyabhicharini. Avyabhicharini is a nice word. It means undivided bhakti. Avyabhichari bhakti. Unto whom? Unto Krishna. Mai cha ananya yogena bhaktir avyabhicharini. Those are undivided devotion to the Supreme. That's the primary characteristic, the devotee of the Lord, and then all the other characteristics flow from that. Like, who's this one? Prahlad Maharaj. He was tortured by his father, but because he was absorbed in thought of the Supreme, he was very tolerant, and the snakes didn't bother him. Compassion. This is a painting of Narada Muni meeting a hunter, celebrated event. The hunter's name was Magari. And he not only was a hunter of animals, but he had learned from his father how to half kill animals and get some pleasure watching them flapping as they're half dead. They couldn't run away because they got arrows in them, but they didn't die either. So Narada asked Magari, interesting. He didn't say stop killing. He said, don't have kill. Kill them completely. He said, why? He said, because they suffer. Really? I never thought about that. They suffer? Yes, and that suffering they experience, you'll have to undergo too. So what am I going to do? I've been doing this my whole life. I've been half killing animals. And Narada said, well, I'll tell you what to do, but first you got to break your bow. Break my bow. It's how I maintain my family. Like, how can I break my bow? I'll maintain you. And he was so, Narada's so powerful, he just accepted, okay. He broke his bow and he made him into a saint. Thankless task of impressing upon others the importance of devotional service. He taught the hunter how to become a devotee on the fast track. It happened. He became, there's more to the narration, but he became an exalted person just by Narada association. So as Narada was going here and there, giving the teachings of bhakti even to unqualified people, our founder, Acharya Srila Prabhupada, is pictured here in a print shop, and he was reviewing the galley proofs of the next book when the printer said, Swamiji, why are you printing this magazine? You should print books, substantial books, because magazines people may throw away, but books people will keep. Write books. I'll print your books for you. So while engaged in preaching work, sometimes there's opposing elements. They have to meet. The print shop doesn't look like a very clean place, but he had to do that because he had to get his books printed. Or another nice example, some of you are familiar with Lord Chaitanya. He sent his chief associate, Lord Nityananda, and Haridas Thakur to go into the marketplace and just encourage people to chant. And Nityananda was a bit of a wild person. When he saw these two drunkards, he thought, let's get them to chant. Because they were brahmanas, but by bad association, they became bad. They became wild men and drunkards and womanmongers and this and that. Thieves, rogues. So Nityananda tried to get them to chant. And one of them, in a drunken state, picked up a clay pot and threw him and hit him in the head. And his head was bleeding. Nityananda said, that's okay. Just chant. Lord Chaitanya heard that Nityananda had been hurt, and he came and was ready to finish them with his Sudarshan Chakra. Nityananda implored him, no, no, no. Save them. Give them devotion. Sometimes devotees are personally attacked, as Nityananda was attacked. Here's a nice painting of Gorkishore Das Babaji. Many examples of what happened with him. It's not exactly someone was beating him or harming him or something, but he was very renounced and very tolerant. The characteristic of a sadhu. These are just some paintings. I'm going quickly because of time. This is Narada Muni, who also is very, very merciful. He travels here and there for one purpose, to give bhakti. That's what's in his heart, and that's what comes out of his heart, because he's very merciful. Lord Chaitanya even in his mercy, was getting the animals in the forest of Jarikanda to engage in the chanting and dancing and transcendental activity. He's not only a well-wisher of human society, but a well-wisher of animal society as well. See in the background, that's his brahmachari assistant who's, oh no, this is dangerous. But the elephants in the background, they're chanting and dancing, tigers and deer, normal enemies, they're chanting and dancing. Mahaprabhu was very powerful. This is an example of Prahlad before Lord Nrsingadev. When Prahlad was asked by Lord Nrsingadev, please take a benediction, first he said, please forgive my father. Please grant freedom to my father for all of his bad deeds. And Lord Nrsingadev said, that's already done, because by being your father, he's liberated. So ask for something else. And Prahlad said, well, I don't need something else for myself, because I just remember you. This is the stage of perfection of Prahlad, was constant remembrance. I just remember you and everything's nice. But my big concern, my anxiety, is all the other people of this world that are so much absorbed in activities of darkness and ignorance. And because of that, they suffer. So I don't want liberation without their being delivered also. Can you deliver them also? Or engage me in such a way I can help them become delivered also? These are characteristics of a sadhu. There's Prabhupada. This is in the backyard of the Bhaktivedanta Manor. Maybe you know about this. In the early days, there was no temple in London. And Prabhupada sent 3 household couples to London, young American, like basically kids, barely 20, 21, newly married. Off they go to London. And they got creative. They were nice devotees, and they were very dedicated to Prabhupada. So they thought, this is some nice history, if the Beatles could become interested in Krishna consciousness, then we could really take off here in London and all over Europe and all over the world. So what they did was, they were really good at cooking. And so they went to the recording studio, and they didn't say anything. They just brought prasadam. The Hare Krishnas have brought prasadam. And every day it was something different and something fantastic. They didn't say Haribol to the Beatles. They just dropped off prasadam for the staff and the people, and the Beatles took the prasadam. One day, George Harrison came out of the studio, and they were distributing the prasadam. And he was like, oh, you're the ones that bring this food every day. And so some exchange. It was one devotee, Shamsundar, and some dialogue, and they started making friendship. And then one thing led to the next thing, led to the next thing. And they started doing music together, because they were all musical devotees, and George Harrison, a musician. So they started doing music in the recording studio. And he said, there's many, many, many steps in between. But he said, let's make a record together. Here's a detail. One of that couples was Jamuna. Jamuna has such a wonderful singing voice. And from her singing, George said to her, she told me this personally, I can make you famous. You have such a voice, I can make you famous. She said, let me think about it. Didn't take long. She said, I don't want to be famous. I don't want that lifestyle. I just want to sing for Krishna. He said, okay, let's make a recording. So they made a recording in the recording studio. And it became a top selling record during that period of time. for like 3 months, the Hare Krishna mantra. So people all over Europe are hearing the Hare Krishna mantra coming from Apple Records. Anyway, and after some time, he had an estate outside the city, and he donated it to Prabhupada. Now it's a very nice property and a very nice temple. It has a long history of how they had to go through to maintain it. But it's the Bhaktivedanta Manor, it's called. So this is Prabhupada in the backyard of the Bhaktivedanta Manor. And while it was a nice gift, his contemplation is the welfare of the world. That's the heart of our founder Acharya, and he lived his life according to that contemplation. He traveled all over the world 12 times. At an old age, there's some older people here in the room. He was of the same age as some of you, and just traveled around the world tirelessly to bring Krishna consciousness. And the people that he sat with were all kinds of people, not necessarily wealthy and culturally refined people, just young people in the parks of San Francisco and New York and wherever they were, giving his kindness to everyone. This is characteristics of a sadhu. It's part of this whole section of Sadhu Sangastika. If you want to, if association with a sadhu is so important, what characteristics should you look for to see? A sadhu behaves with all conditioned souls for their ultimate relief from material entanglement. This is Prahlad speaking to his classmates. Prahlad's father was a bad guy. Hiranyakashipu was a super bad guy. And the teachers were instructed to make his son like him. But he wasn't like him. As soon as the teachers left the classroom, what do kids do when the teacher leaves the classroom? Make noise and have fun, play. So they wanted to play, and Prahlad said, no. Let's get serious about what the purpose of human life is, and describing to his classmates what the purpose of human life is. When they're young, that's the time to begin. We're almost done. This is Srila Prabhupada in Germany. And you can see the smiling faces of the devotees. Whatever it is that Prabhupada's saying, it was funny. And it's very joyful. No one can be more friendly than a sadhu in relieving a conditioned soul. These are people like, young Western people. This is Germany. I recognize the faces, so I know. What were they doing before? It's probably not elevated things, but in Prabhupada's association, they were picked up. And he gave his kindness to everyone, even reporters that would sometimes say challenging things. And he didn't get bothered. He would help them without enemies. Although they have no enemies, sometimes these persons become inimical. Again, this is Prahlad and Hiranyakashipu trying to finish him, trampling under a wild elephant. And Prahlad was protected. They have no enemies because towards others, they don't feel inimical. And they're always very peaceful. This is a prostitute trying to disgrace Haridas Thakur, who helped her become a devotee. And here's Grandfather Bhishma. And he simply wanted, this is a painting where he's dropping his weapons because Krishna came charging at him with the chariot wheel of Arjuna. He wanted Krishna to break his promise. Knowing that Krishna would break his promise if it meant protecting his devotee. Very important that that a sadhu abides by the scriptures. It's right in the verse spoken by Kapila. They know what the scriptures say and they live by it. The outside is the same as what's inside. The inside is the same that's outside. And then what's inside is the teachings of the scriptures. Oops, there's this. Yeah. Okay. There's Vyasadeva and the writing of the Vedas. Because all the Shastras instruct us to obey the orders of the personality of Godhead. The foundation of a life of bhakti, because this is what Kapila Deva is teaching to Devahuti, engage in bhakti, and everything that you're looking for will be found. And the foundation for bhakti is from the scriptures. We know what to do, what not to do, and how to do from the scriptures. That's the foundation. So the life of devotion, there's encouragement to read Bhagavad Gita, read Srimad Bhagavatam, become familiar with what's in the scriptures, discuss them with one another. It's really, I'm sure that there are some programs like this in Houston where there's groups of people that read the Bhagavatam together or study Bhagavad Gita together. That's Sadhu Sangha. And as you do like that, the understandings become clearer and your heart becomes purified by that understanding, and your bhakti life becomes nourished. It's very simple and natural process. And then this is how the verse ends. All of the sadhu's characteristics are sublime. Like Dhruva, devotional service is without deviation. He was very, very, very fixed. He had a material motive, but he was very fixed in his desire to reach Lord Vishnu, and it happened. This is the painting of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when there was necessity for the benefit of others besides himself. He was prepared. In the painting, it's his mother, and in the background behind his mother is his good wife, Mother Sachi, and Vishnu Priya. And in order to give himself and the teachings of devotion to the world, he left that very easy to be attached to a nice situation, a very affectionate, loving mother, and a very beautiful and qualified wife. He for the higher purpose, he left that. I think I'm going to try to end here. Everything in this picture in the upper left, that's Srila Prabhupada requesting his wife. She was not like him. It wasn't a good match. She was not very devotional. She was not very materialistic, but materialistic. And in the times when during Prabhupada's youth, or in the early married life, printing presses weren't so common. It was not easy to get Srimad Bhagavatam. His wife went to the shop and gave Prabhupada's Bhagavatam in a barter exchange for some tea biscuits. And Prabhupada, one of his elder sons, said, "That's it. Across the line. I'm the age of retirement. I'm nearing 60. Our sons are of age to look after the family business. They'll look after you. They'll look after the family business. I'm going to enter the Vanaprastha stage." It wasn't a happy parting. And in the middle pictures, he some years later, he accepted sannyas order. And the picture on the far right, he's with his spiritual master and getting instructions from his spiritual master on how to utilize resources that Krishna gives, specifically the importance of printing transcendental literature. This is Madhavendra Puri meeting Krishna in Vrindavan. Renunciation will be successful only when the sadhu's energy is employed in the service of the Lord with great austerity. This is I think our last slide. Devotee develops all the good qualities of the demigods. That's like Prahlad. Whereas a non-devotee, even though academically qualified, has no actual good qualifications. Who's the person in the painting? Hiranyakashipu. Who's Hiranyakashipu anyways? What's he doing? He underwent austerities. He wanted immortality. So what did he do to get immortality? He went to the forest, standing on his toes, with his arms raised, eating only air. He stood there for such a long time that the ants came and started eating away at his body. That hurts. But he just tolerated it and continued his austerities and continued his austerities. And he became so powerful, the universe was trembling. The painting shows Brahma coming, and from his kamandalu, he poured water on that anthill, and the body of Hiranyakashipu became nice and young again. And Hiranyakashipu wanted to become immortal. So Brahma said, I can't give you immortality. I can't give something to you I don't have. Ask for something I can give you. So he asked for this and that and the other thing too. It's the imitation of immortality. But so he was very qualified scholastically and through austerities, and his other material qualifications were substantial, but he didn't have any spiritual qualification. So Sadhu, at the heart, this is the conclusion, has the spiritual quality of devotion to the Supreme. How are we doing? I've been talking too much. You want to ask something? We're done. I'm done. I'm going to say, okay. Okay. I've got some unanswered text messages too, but I'm here with you all, at least for some time. I have a sense that the mature personalities here in this room, there's put it on a pan scale, there's a lot of bhakti here. Yes? There's a lot of years and years and years and years and years of devotion. So I'm feeling inspired by that fact. I'm speaking very quickly about different stories, and this is suited for a more of an accomplished devotee audience. But you all get the message, I think, because of your innate devotion. Any comments or questions? Sadhu Sangastaka.
Why it's called thankless job to pursue somebody to be a devotee?
Well, that's a nice question. Certainly, those that are recipients and it touches their heart, they're feeling the heart being touched, they feel very grateful. There's lots of expressions of gratitude. At the same time, in this in this world, the numbers of persons that are really interested in real devotion it's a very small percentage. So the rest of the people, it's, you know, there's something wrong with you. They're not appreciated. I'll give a little example. Just hearing your question, I'm thinking one time I was in Mayapur, and after being in Mayapur, I got in a train and I was going to visit some devotees I knew that were at a university in what's the state that's just from Calcutta going west. They're in huh? Yes, in Bihar. Yeah, in Bihar. So it was a night train. So my travels in India, I learned, earlier days, one of the best things to do is to go to sleep early, get in the upper bunk, so everybody can do whatever they're doing and just like zone out. And then get up early in the morning so you're not disturbing anybody, brush, wash, bathe, bucket, shower in that little tiny little space, the toilet area. But then by that people get up, it dries out. So they can do my chanting. And I'm not disturbing anybody. So in this particular ride, it's in my mind, this is a thankless task. The fellow, it was in a first class compartment. The fellow on the opposite side was a businessman. He got up and did what people do that are business people. He brushed his teeth, he got some tea, and got a newspaper. And that's how he started his morning. But you were sharing the same cabin in the train. But when he opened his paper, he looked at me and said, "Do you need money?" I said, everybody that lives in this world needs some money. How do you get your money? And I understood what he was doing. He's saying, you're a parasite. And my answer was, sir, we get our money from the same place you do, from God. The difference is that you think it's coming from you, when in fact it's coming from God. And the same is coming from me, it's coming from God. I mean, I didn't use the tone, but that's the answer I gave him. And he looked at me and went, and flipped his newspaper up because he didn't want to see me anymore. He continued drinking his tea. So that was pretty graphic. It was like, okay, the thankless task. And I wasn't there to win the man over or something. But one of the responsibilities of somebody in that situation is to remain undisturbed and show by good conduct and good character. This is what a sadhu is meant to do. Despite discouraging words and behaviors, etc., you continue. In that sense, a thankless task. Because people are attached to the temporary, and you're interfering with their program, the temporary program. Now, there's layers. There are people that are more pious, and they say, that's very nice. I can't do that, but that's very nice. But there's a lot of other people that don't say it's very nice. You have something?
Yes, go on.
Yeah.
So in this pastime, when Hiranyakashipu asked Brahma that, can you give me the boon of immortality? Brahma said, even I have to die. But if we look at another pastime where at the churning of ocean, I think you know the question.
I've heard this one before, but go ahead.
At the churning of ocean, Vishnu appears as Mohini Murti, and then he gives the nectar pot to the demigods, which is essentially giving them the boon of immortality.
No, not immortality,
Okay.
long life.
Okay.
The Amrita is not, it's longevity, but not immortality. Nice try.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Guru Maharaj, this is just a observation and a comment. In the case of Mrigari, his entire family was in the activity of hunting, and even his name in Sanskrit means like the enemy of animals. So whoever gave him that name, his father and mother probably, they were intent that he continues the horrible activities they were doing. So what I noticed is that even though he knew nothing better and he was sort of like from birth, sort of destined by his parents to do that or taught by his parents to do that, just by the association of Narada Muni and because he had faith and trust, he was able to quickly become a pure devotee.
Very quickly.
And that really sort of like, it just struck me that even though like all these people, like the hippies and everyone, like they were nowhere, and Srila Prabhupada just showed up to New York City and suddenly all of them were like Vaikuntha men. So that was just a realization.
In shorter language, someone who's carrying bhakti can be a change agent. People that are going that way with their life can go a different way with their life just by association. That's the Shakti that's being carried by someone who's carrying Bhakti. Bhakti Shakti is passed on to other people. And if there's different degrees, but that's what Bhakti can do. It can change, it can transform. It's not, back to the earlier question, it's a thankless task. Some people don't want to change, like, get out of here, etc. And some people even, threatening physically and otherwise. But bhakti has its potency. Something else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for the nice class. You mentioned about the qualities of a sadhu. There were many qualities that were listed. And you also mentioned Prahlad Maharaj's instruction that whatever a sadhu acts, it is for the ultimate benefit of the conditioned living entities. My question or clarification that I'm seeking from you is, we see different devotees exhibit the qualities of tolerance, peacefulness, and friendliness in different colors, depending on who they interact with. Although the key to all of that is they are wishing for the welfare of the living entity. So I guess the class that you're giving is how to recognize a sadhu and take his association. So those are the qualities that one should look for.
Well, so how to take his association comes next.
Yeah.
But first, identify who is the sadhu.
But then these qualities are so different in their expression, or the way sadhus express these. There's whole variety of it. So how do we recognize that this is a genuine quality and this is a sadhu versus this is just tolerance and it is not really based on spiritual welfare of the living entity. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Your question isn't so clear, but I think I understand your question.
Well, I can.
Let me restate your question, see if I got it. This isn't the way you expressed it, but the modes of nature manifest things. And in the lighter side of things, there's the mode of goodness, as opposed to passion, ignorance, darker side. So when there's the mode of goodness, it appears that there's good qualities, because that's what mode of goodness looks like, good qualities. And compassion and tolerance, et cetera, may be manifest through the medium of, through the lens of, through the medium of mode of goodness. And how are we to understand what's a transcendental feature of that good, of that quality, and something that's a semblance of that quality?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Well, two main things. One is it endures or sustains, and it's not dependent upon circumstance. Circumstance doesn't create bhakti, nor circumstance destroy bhakti. So it's circumstance independent. That is, it's steady, it's sustainable, it's always there. The second is the satisfaction. I'm not at the center, the Supreme is at the center. Then it's spiritual. If I'm at the center, then it's not spiritual, not fully spiritual. So there may be a theistic, let's say somebody's really into, I met somebody in Austin, and this is a devotee, a lady who came all the way from Delhi to take a 4-year study and get a PhD in some kind, I couldn't exactly follow it, but dyslexia or some disease that some people have. And she wants to specialize and help people like that. She held up her hand and showed me a tattoo on her arm. This is like, sophisticated lady in her 40s. Krishna and whatever this disease is. And that's her life, is dedicated to that. But with Krishna at the center, then it's not just philanthropy or helping other people. It's something that has Krishna at the center. Now, you have to put a tattoo on your arm or something, but with Krishna's at the center, not just in name, but in fact, then it is spiritual. And it'll be sustained, even there's obstacles and shortcomings and hardships and difficulties and the things that happen in life. Ahaitukiya pratyataya yatma suprasidati. There's no material cause that starts it, no material cause that stops it. That's the sustainable word. Steady. Anyone else?
Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, this is about Hiranyakashipu. So Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha were kind of a Jai Vijay and that pastime. But here, Prahlad Maharaj is asking about his liberation or first. So how do we reconcile both the things? One,
Both which things?
like because Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha again comes as a Ravana and Kumbhakarna, and then again in the Dwapar Yuga as well. So how do we reconcile like liberation and coming back again?
How do we reconcile liberation and coming back again?
Yes.
They didn't get liberated. When Lord Nrsimhadev killed Hiranyakashipu, he didn't achieve liberation. He achieved freedom from the reactions of those sins. That kind of, making the slate clean. But he didn't achieve liberation.
That later.
Okay. With Shishupal and Dantavakra, they achieved liberation. They went back to their position in Vaikuntha. Okay, we're done. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Thank you for patiently sitting through all this.